Yep, it's recording. I remember one time last week, I basically recorded the table because I forgot to flip it over. That was great. All right, so here we go. You read an excerpt from Ben Franklin's autobiography, okay? Now, here's the deal. Everybody knows who Ben Franklin is. We know that he was what you might call a Renaissance man. A Renaissance man or woman, for now, for that matter, is someone who's good at a lot of different things, right? He was an inventor, a scientist, a diplomat, a printer. I mean, this guy, he was funny. He was also a womanizer, but that's another story, right? I mean, he was just a charming, fun individual, right? He once said, by the way, that beer is evidence that God loves us. Okay? So, he's someone that's, I think, not only ingenious, but relatable. Okay? So, you read the excerpt from the autobiography. The autobiography, it was written over the course of several decades, but it wasn't published until 1791. Well, he died in 1790. What I didn't know until yesterday, because I did a little bit more reading on it, was that he didn't finish it. It's actually unfinished. Now, the part that I gave you is the part that I'm most interested in, and that was when he was like a kid, right? And kind of getting his start. So, something I want you guys to keep in mind, although I'm not going to make you write it down, okay, is that Ben Franklin, you don't have to memorize these dates, but you can tell that he lived through the 1700s. Right? Almost at the beginning, then he lived almost to the end. He lived about the same span and at about the same time as Jonathan Edwards. Okay, now who is Jonathan Edwards? Nope, that's John Smith. Yes, Jonathan Edwards, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, right? So Jonathan Edwards is a Puritan who is trying to bring people back to those older beliefs, right? Whereas Ben Franklin is quite different. I mean, they're living at the same time, but one is old school Puritanism. Ben Franklin is all about like the Enlightenment. Have you heard of the Enlightenment? Okay, so the Enlightenment is this new way of thinking about science being where we find our answers. There's a shifting away from like looking to religion for answers to looking at science for answers. And Ben Franklin's kind of like the poster child of this. He is the guy, right? The Enlightenment is also known as the Age of Reason. You may have heard it that way. And in America, it's also the Age of Revolution. Because what's going to happen in 1776? The Declaration of Independence. That's right. It was so obvious you didn't know it, right?
1776.
1776, the Declaration, right? Now we're gearing up to Revolution, and there are battles that have actually been fought between the American colonists and the British before 1776. But he kind of represents that time period, bless you. All right, so yesterday, you read the excerpt, and I wanted you to get a sense of his personality, okay? So I gave you a couple of passages that you were going to look at and tell me, like, what the tone was, along with insights into who he is, okay? Now, Amber, what you working on, girl? You taking notes or doing something else? Be honest. All right. She's like, I'm doing something else. Okay, put it away. This is important stuff. Not just for this, but probably help you out in history too, honestly. Okay? All right, so here is Ben Franklin, and he's talking about his big brother James. By the way, James, who he is apprenticed with, how do they get along? Not very well, right? James is much older because there were 16 kids, y'all. 16 kids in that family, and Ben Franklin's one of the youngest ones, okay? So when he's like 10, 12 years old, he is apprenticed to James. James is in like his mid-20s. And Ben is like exceptionally bright. And James, maybe had some issues with the fact that Ben was probably also outspoken. Okay? But James had some ingenious men among his friends who amused themselves by writing little pieces for the paper, which gained it credit and made it more in demand. They would visit with us. They would talk about their writing. And he says, at the end, I was excited to try my hand among them. Okay, now, so here's a kid, younger than you.
I know, I feel like I'm the same.
All right, younger than you, who's like, okay, we've got all these witty, smart, established men who gather at this paper. They talk about the things they've written. They add little pieces to the paper. And I want to see how, I could fare among that company, right? So what does that tell us about him as a kid, that he's going to try his hand at writing something to put in the paper too?
He's ambitious.
He's ambitious. What else? Confident. Good. All right. And I don't know about tone. This one's kind of hard to tell the tone. But, it's not formal. It's not real formal, this autobiography, especially when he's talking about his childhood. So, being still a boy and suspecting that my brother would object to printing anything of mine if he knew it were mine, right? I disguised my handwriting, wrote it anonymously, and did what? What's he do? He slips it under the door. Okay, what's that tell us about him as a young boy? He's sneaky. He also knows enough about his big brother to know that if James knew it was actually Ben who wrote it, he wouldn't publish it. Heck, he might not even read it. They don't get along very well, right? So he sneaks it under the door, okay? It was found in the morning, and they read it, they commented on it, and of course he's listening to what they're saying, okay? And I had the exquisite pleasure of finding that it met with their approbation, means approval, and that in their different guesses of the author, none were named but men of character, learning, and ingenuity. So he kind of fooled them, right? Because he's a kid. And he disguises his handwriting. He probably disguises the voice, too. I do know that some of these anonymous things that he slips in the paper are written by a character, written through the voice of a personality called Silence Dogood, who's like a middle-aged widow. So here he is, like this teenager writing in the voice of a middle-aged woman and getting away with it, right? And talking about the state of marriage and raising kids and everyday wisdom. He is a pretty smart guy, okay? So he says they talked about it and they liked it. So what's the tone here? Yeah, confident, proud.
Excitement?
Yeah, excited. Yeah. So, he's proud of his work. Even as a kid, he was proud of it. He backs off a little bit, though. He's the older Franklin writing about the younger Franklin. And he says, I suppose now that I was rather lucky in my judges, perhaps they were not so very good as I had first esteemed them. Now, you may not find this humorous, but Ben Franklin's funny, okay? So if you ever read a passage of Ben Franklin, especially if you find something on like the ACT, used to be that they had them on the EOC, but y'all are lucky y'all don't have to take the EOC this year, okay? You gotta always keep in mind, Franklin's funny. He has kind of a snarky sense of humor sometimes. And in this, he's saying, well, maybe they weren't as brilliant as I first thought. You have kind of a false modesty here. And then, I don't know, it seems to me that he's the adult. I was about to say Abraham Lincoln. The adult Ben Franklin looking back on the younger one thinking, well, I thought I was something, but maybe, I wasn't all that. It's very human, okay? All right. Let's see. His brother considers himself my master. our disputes were brought before our father, and either I was generally in the right or maybe a better pleader. What do you think that means, a better pleader? If you have a dispute. Well, yeah, maybe you're better at argument, right? And the dad usually judged in my favor. So he says, I think my dad maybe favored me, or maybe I was just better at arguing, okay? And then, all right, he's deciding that he's going to take off. Y'all, he's like 16. And he gets an opportunity to leave. And he leaves the newspaper. He leaves his brother without a lot of money. He's got very little money. He doesn't really even know where he's going, okay? But he knows he has to leave. He has to leave that town. I think it's Boston, if I'm not mistaken. And he, because his brother would not allow him to work for another newspaper. He would like talk trash about him, and he'd be out of work. So he's got to go somewhere new on his own, away from his brother, where his brother can't find him.
Did he work?
And he does. Yeah, he was an apprentice to his brother. Do y'all know what that means?
Yes.
I kind of assumed that you did, but that means, Bess, that, if you're an apprentice, you don't get paid. It's kind of like an internship, except that it's one that lasts like 10 years. So you learn a trade from your master, right? Or in this case, his brother. Well, he says he had to leave, and that was okay because, let's see, his brother, let me see if I can find it. He says maybe it was unfair of me to do that, but the unfairness of it weighed little with me when under the impressions of resentment for the blows his passion too often urged him to bestow upon me. What does that little passage mean?
He insults him?
No,
No?
he does, but the blows his passion urged him to bestow upon me. I mean, yeah, I would imagine there were verbal, abuse, but this is physical. His brother hit him.
Hit him?
Yeah.
Like with what?
I don't know. It doesn't tell us. He beats him. Okay? Which wasn't out of the ordinary for an apprentice master to do to the apprentice kid or whatnot. But Ben's not going to take it, and he bails. He's out of there. Okay? So at the top, we get some insight, because if he's going to leave at your age with not even knowing exactly where you're going to go, not having any money, what's that tell you?
Determination.
Oh, determined. What else?
Confident that he's going to make it.
Yep. What else?
He's not afraid.
Courageous. What else? What's that term when you're willing to do on your own what needs to be done? He's independent. Absolutely. Now down at the bottom, it changes a little bit. He says now as his adult self, he says, James was not otherwise ill-natured, like he was not a bad guy. He says, perhaps I was too saucy and provoking. So what's he say at the end?
Maybe it was my fault.
Maybe I deserved it. I love the word saucy, by the way. I just think that's great. I would imagine that means that he probably spoke his mind and maybe pointed out some of James's mistakes, and yeah, it was a little obnoxious, right? Now, I love it because this shows the older Ben Franklin looking on his kid self and being, I guess, proud of what he accomplished, but also seeing that he was flawed. Kind of like if you ever look back on your middle school years.
Which is what we're about to write up. What? Are we about to
Is
write
it?
this? No.
Oh, no, I was just going to mention it, but yeah. Have y'all ever looked back on your middle school years and went, oh, Lord?
Yes.
No, you were like all about it. I was the queen of middle school. All right. Not me, girl. Not me. All right, so I love that we can see his older self looking back on his younger self and seeing that there are issues. All right, so pasta, we talked about this the other day. I'm probably going to have to tell you the purpose because you need some backstory, all right? So the first part of this book, and it is a book-length work, is written to his son, or at least under the guise of being written to his son. And in it, he says, I want to tell you how I got my start, because he had, humble beginnings, one of 16 kids. They didn't have a lot of money. And by the time he dies, y'all, he's like probably the most famous individual in the entire world. Okay? So it's like a rags to riches story. So I think his purpose is like what we see in a lot of autobiographies. It's to like show regular old folk that with enough confidence and hard work and ingenuity. What's ingenuity? It's connected to genius. Ingenuity.
Intelligence.
Yeah, there you go. That you too can make something of yourself, right? Pretty cool. So that's the purpose. The audience is probably us, any old regular folk, right? The subject, autobiography, would be what? Himself. Good. The tone, y'all may not have read enough, but you could probably tell in the individual passages that it's not super formal. It's almost self-deprecating at points. Have y'all ever heard this expression, he has a self-deprecating sense of humor? What does that mean? Yeah, he makes fun of himself. Yeah. Yeah, you don't take yourself too seriously, okay? We get the impression that Ben Franklin, though he was incredibly successful and important and, famous, he did not take himself too seriously. And that's always a good thing. You never want to be one of those folks, okay? And bias, throughout the story, there's going to be different biases. It is rather long, but at the beginning, who is it he at least biased against?
His brother.
Yeah, he doesn't like that brother very much, although he does say things like, maybe I deserved it, all right? Okay, so real quick, and I'm kind of running out of time, let me talk about the quiz questions from yesterday, okay? And what I'm going to do is just kind of get, there's nobody in here who didn't take that quiz, right? Everybody's gotten done? Yes, okay, cool. All right, so I'm in my second hour here. Let's go to modules and quizzes. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I'm just gonna do preview, and it's kind of like I'm going through the test myself. I would do very well, by the way, I'm just saying, if I took it myself. That was a joke, all right. That was a joke. All right, and I did make up the question, so there you go. Okay, so what's the one thing that's colorful and the other dreary? Yeah, y'all got that one. Good job, good job. Okay, and then, all right, so here's the deal. Oh, no, y'all got this one too. Okay, so Hester takes the child, covers up the letter A, but realizes what? That's right. Now look, here's a little moment that we're going to talk about more of in a minute, okay? So Hester, in chapter 8, I know you haven't read chapter 8 yet, but that's okay. In chapter 8, we find out that because Pearl is such a difficult child, people even theorize that maybe Hester's not telling us who the dad is because, maybe it's the devil. Maybe she had a fling in the forest with the devil, right? She is an odd kid, and she's a difficult child. She's not easy. Well, we're going to find out that because she's so strange and just ill-behaved, that the authorities are thinking about taking her away from Hester, okay? And Hester's going to have to go to the governor's house to plead with him to let her keep Pearl. And she dresses Pearl up in a red gown with gold, flourishes. So she essentially dresses her like what? The A, okay? And that's going to be important because the A and Pearl are connected. What is the letter A supposed to do to Hester?
Show her that she's sinning.
Yeah, punish her. Remind her every day, you stepped out of line, lady. Okay, you got to pay for it. Well, okay, Pearl is like the letter, right? If Pearl were an easy child, she would not be doing what she's supposed to do. like the letter A, Hester's going to argue that Pearl is not just her joy, because it's all she has, right? And she loves her, but also her what, do you think? Say it again.
Shame.
Catherine?
Shame.
Her punishment, yeah. I don't think she's ashamed of Pearl, because she like puts her out there. Like she dresses her like, I mean, Hester's a seamstress, right? She's got skills. She's going to dress her beautifully. And Pearl is a beautiful child. But she's difficult. She's always acting out, throwing mud at the little Puritan children and such, although I don't blame her for that, right? So if she were easy, she wouldn't be fulfilling the job she's supposed to do. Okay, and that's part of the argument that Hester's going to make to keep Pearl. She's my reminder daily of my sin, just like this letter A is. Okay, all right, so that kind of goes along with that. All right, okay, so Dimsdale, and we talked about this, right? So you guys who didn't get this were either absent and didn't watch the video, or you weren't listening, because we talked about this one. Dimsdale looks down at Hester as Hester's standing on the scaffold, and he says, "Be not silent from any mistaken pity or tenderness for him." In other words, don't feel sorry for this guy who is your fellow sinner. And then he said sufferer, right? "Believe me, though he were to step down from a high place and stand beside thee, better were it so than to hide a guilty heart through life. What can thy silence do for him except add hypocrisy to sin?" So in short, don't feel sorry for this guy and think you're doing him a favor by keeping quiet, because if you keep quiet, it's actually worse for him. Why?
Because he's going to do it again.
Ooh. She doesn't say anything about doing it. He doesn't say anything about doing it again. He's going to be, well, he's going to be a hypocrite, basically. Okay, got to keep it to the text, right? You're going to add hypocrisy to his sin. So not only is he going to be an adulterer, but he's going to be a hypocrite, right? And then later it says maybe he doesn't have the courage to grasp the forgiveness for himself. Like she has that open shame, so she's going to be able to work out that shame easily or more easily. Your partner's is hidden. It's secret. Maybe he doesn't have the guts to come forward. Okay? So those were the parts that I was hoping that you would bring up. And some of y'all got partial credit because you got some of it, but not all of it. And I haven't finished grading those yet, but I should have those ready for you probably tomorrow. Okay? So you can look at it. You won't be here, I know. All right, now. Hester says, "I've greatly wronged thee." He says, "We've wronged each other. Mine was the first wrong when I betrayed the budding youth into a false, unnatural relation with my decay. Between thee and me the scale hangs balanced, but there is one who lives among us who has wronged us both. Who is he?" And then he says, "There are few secrets that can remain hidden to someone who devotes himself to finding the solution to a mystery." All right, now I didn't read all of y'all's quizzes, but I know I got through Sanaya's, and it was kind of funny because she said something like, "This is Hester and her husband," right? And where are they? Yeah, they're in the prison, okay? And what did you say? It was so funny. You said something like, he said, you said something like the old man, the ugly old man. But then somebody, and it may not have been Sanaya, said something like, he has taken her youth by marrying her. And I thought that might have been Hadley. And I thought that was really insightful because he says, "Look, I'm an old man. I shouldn't have married you. I thought he doesn't say it here, but he says basically, I thought my love would be enough for both of us, and it clearly wasn't. I've wronged you, you've wronged me, but there's someone who's wronged us both, and who is that guy?"
The dad.
That's the dad. So we're going to figure out who that is, okay? All right. Amber, you with me? I feel like you're fading on me, girl.
No.
Okay,
You
good.
stop talking, so just start doing this.
All right, so there dwelt the feet of one whom she deemed herself connected with in a union that unrecognized on earth would bring them together before the bar of final judgment. And then she talks about this marriage altar. So Hester could leave, y'all. She could just say, I'm going to go back to England. Who's going to see if I wear a letter A over there, right? But she doesn't. And there are a couple of reasons. One is that she doesn't want to leave the scene of her guilt. Like, she feels that she sinned there. By golly, she needs to own up to it and accept the punishment, okay? Which, by the way, is the reason that when Pearl starts, like, throwing stuff at the letter, has she done that yet with y'all, what you've read? Okay, it's coming. She always messes with that letter A, right? Hester doesn't correct her. She just lets it come because she knows it's her punishment, okay? But the other reason is a little bit more subtle. Whose feet are treading the ground close by? Yeah, someone she loves. So the other reason she stays is that she loves this man and she doesn't want to leave him, okay? Even though they're really not going to be able to see each other. All right. Bear with me. Y'all being real patient. Okay, sympathetic throb. We talked about that letter, y'all, has given her powers to see into the hearts of others. So if it starts to like give off a pain, tells her there are other folks that have sinned too. They're just held in secret. All right, now, Pearl. Pearl's just bad. But you couldn't just say she's just bad. You had to give me some examples. One, she doesn't have any friends. She's short-tempered. She like chooses to play in the forest with all the like flowers and the rocks and the weeds and all that kind of stuff. And that's where she's very comfortable. But in her play, she doesn't choose to play like family. She chooses to like create battles and stuff, which kind of tell us that she's a little bit out of sorts. Everybody's always fighting in her playtime. She is constantly asking her mother, where did I come from, mother, right? And Hester wants to say things like, well, you know, you came from your heavenly father. And Pearl's like, no, me, nuh-uh. So she's just difficult, okay? She is always throwing tantrums. And so anything about that was pretty specific would have given you your credit there, okay? All right, now, I want y'all to go to chapter 8. I don't have much time, but I got enough time to talk a little bit about chapter 8, although clearly I'm skipping a little bit, so you're going to have to go back and fill in the gaps, okay? But if you look at chapter 8, 1, 2, 3, about 4, no, it's actually 5 pages in. All right, you are going to have to find a paragraph that starts, "This is awful." And it's in quotation marks because it's "This is awful," cried the governor. I wish I could give you a page number, but no one has my book. So when y'all find it, hold your book up and wave it around. Maybe somebody else has got that one too. Chapter 8. Well, no, you're probably not, but I'm not going to. Here's the deal, y'all. I'm not going to get to see you tomorrow. Monday I'll have with you, but Tuesday y'all aren't here. Did y'all realize that?
Why?
It's election day. This is an election. This is a polling. This is like a facility or whatnot.
When did we figure out who won though?
It's gonna take a
Oh,
while.
we don't know. That's part of the whole question that is, 2020, right? All right, so in chapter 8, and I know you have not read chapter 8, but I'm jumping ahead because it's important and I need to, move along with this.
When will our next test be for this?
Probably
For what chapters?
Thursday of next week, possibly Friday. I'll let you know.
What are the chapters?
7 through 16. Okay? All right, so backstory, because you haven't read it. You weren't supposed to. Oh my God, stop, Bess. Let me finish, all right? So let's see. We know that Pearl is difficult. The authorities have decided maybe we need to take this child away from her mother because she can't control her, right? Maybe the best thing would be to put her in a fine Puritan home with a different family. Well, Hester goes to the governor And she's got some gloves that she has made for him, and that's kind of the surface reason that she like shows up. But she really wants to beg and, plead to be able to keep her daughter, okay? And this is one of those chapters that you got to read really carefully because there's a lot that happens, but everybody's gathered together, everybody that's important. You got the 2 ministers, you have the governor, and you also have Chillingworth, who is disguised as like the town doctor. Not really disguised, but he is the town doctor now, and he's there too. And here comes this little child who is dressed in this gorgeous red gown with gold thread. Pearl is about 3, okay? And all these men are in the garden, and Pearl kind of runs into the garden, and the governor's like, who is this child? She looks like one of the little elf-like creatures that we left behind in England. Because all the other Puritan children are wearing like really drab colors, right? And they decide that they are going to question her about her faith. They're going to ask her questions over the catechism, okay? And one of the questions is, who made you? Pearl is supposed to say, my heavenly Father, okay? She's been taught that it is her heavenly Father, because Hester has been teaching her what she's supposed to know, but she's acting out kind of like if you have a baby cousin or niece or nephew who like throws a temper tantrum in the least convenient time and place. Yeah, she's supposed to be on best behavior, but instead she like acts out, and she says something like, I was not made, I was plucked off the rose bush that grows beside the prison door. And these men are like, what? I mean, it's just not okay, right? So here's where we start. This is awful, cried the governor, slowly recovering from the astonishment into which Pearl's response had thrown him. Now highlight all this if you got one handy, okay? Here's a child of 3 years old, and she cannot tell me who made her. Without question, she is equally in the dark as to her soul, its present depravity, and her future destiny. Methinks, gentlemen, we need inquire no further. So right there, they're ready to take her away from Hester. Okay, now Hester is like not having it. Highlight this too. Hester caught hold of Pearl and drew her forcibly into her arms, confronting the old Puritan magistrate with almost a fierce expression. Alone in the world, cast off by it, with this sole treasure to keep her heart alive, she felt that she possessed indefeasible rights against the world and was ready to defend them to the death. God gave me the child, cried she. He gave her in requital of all things else which ye have taken from me. In other words, God gave me this child and has taken everything else. It's all I have. She is all I have. Okay? Keep highlighting. She is my happiness. She is my torture nonetheless. Pearl keeps me here in life. Pearl punishes me too. See ye not, she is the scarlet letter, only capable of being loved, and so endowed with a millionfold the power of retribution for my sin. Ye shall not take her. I will die first. Now, so she points out that the child is the letter, which is why she dressed her in red and gold. And she says, God gave her to me. She's my one happiness, but she's what? She's my torture or my punishment too. So she looks at Dimsdale and she said, thou hast understanding of my soul more than these other men. I will not lose the child. Speak for me. Think to it. I will not lose the child. Is it think to it or is it see to it? Look to it. She says, look to it. Okay? There's some double speak happening. Two meanings. When she looks at the young minister and says, you have knowledge of my soul, you know me better than everyone else, they're going to take that as being, he's her minister. Okay? But if you couple this scene with the earlier scene we've looked at where he is high up, she's down below, and he says, don't think you're doing him a favor, though he stepped down from a high position and stand beside thee on thy pedestal, it would be better for him because your silence is only going to make him a hypocrite. Maybe he doesn't have the courage to stand beside thee. So that scene takes on a whole new meaning because now we're starting to figure out this is the father, right? So when she looks at him and she says, you better speak for me, look to it. I mean, you know, there's a threat there, right? In other words, I've kept my mouth shut, but you better handle it. Okay? And that's where I'm going to leave you. All right? Y'all got to keep reading. I think tomorrow the only thing I have y'all doing is working on the Scarlet Letter. So no matter where you are, pick up and get as far as you can. Take notes as you read, guys. It'll help because it's a hard piece, I know. Great story, but oh, so descriptive, right? Have a good day.